What do you say, everybody? It's time. Here we go. This is BamaInsider.com, and we're live with Andrew Bone. We're talking Alabama football recruiting. I'm Mick Gillespie, and I'm in for Kyle Henderson. He's on assignment tonight. He'll be back next week. Hey, let me tell you guys, please post your recruiting questions in the comment box, and we'll get to them as we push through the show tonight. Also want to remind you that all tips, a.k.a. Super Chats, they're going to Andrew Bone. So Bone gets those. Hit the $ next to the comment button. Also, if you're out there and you're smart, you're going to want to become a member of Bama Insider. You can do that by hitting the join button at the end of the video, and you don't have to wait until Tuesday to get Bone's nuggets. Get them all really fast. Go to BamaInsider.com to take advantage of our 30-day trial. Promo code is simply Roll Tide. What's up, Bone?
What's up, Mick? How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm feeling good right now. I've hung out with you over the years, doing the tailgate show, and now I'm filling in for Kyle tonight. He'll be back next week, but it's fun because we get to talk about recruiting. You're the best in the business, my man, and I got to get to this right away because I know everyone's chomping at the bit. Okay, about the number one player in the state of Alabama. He goes by Kool-Aid, and this guy is kind of down to his final decision. Let's talk about him.
Yeah, JaQuincy McKinstry, Kool-Aid, the top player in the state of Alabama from Penzance Valley High School, defensive back. Kind of plays on both sides of the ball. Also is an outstanding wide receiver, but recruited mainly to play in the defensive backfield. And he's had a top three for a while: Alabama, LSU, and Auburn. Those have kind of been his top three schools, and really kind of coming down to the wire here. And I feel like at one point or another, each school has kind of led for his recruitment. And, really for the last couple months, we've all been talking about how, Auburn had all the momentum for him. And really over the course of the last, 4 or 5 days, it seems like the momentum has shifted into Alabama's favor. Now, I don't think he's informed any coaching staff of his decision yet. I think everybody's going to kind of find out here, when he announces that commitment. But there's a lot of buzz on Alabama, and everybody's wondering, what happened, what changed. Well, I think with Alabama already having obviously a lot of success, 2-0, great start to its season, and then the fact that I think Auburn didn't look too hot against Georgia the other night. I also think a trip down to Tuscaloosa may have swayed things a little bit. You can't visit in terms of going on campus and visiting with the coaching staff and touring the facilities and all that stuff right now because it's a recruiting dead period. The recruiting dead period recently been extended until January the 1st, but you can visit campuses. You can go on campus. You just can't visit with the coaching staff. So I think a recent trip to Tuscaloosa may have helped Alabama's chances a little bit there. And like I said, final decision has not been made just yet. And even if he does commit to Alabama, you still have to worry about, will a school potentially, flip him on signing day? So it's something to continue to watch when he does make that decision. But I do think it comes down to the in-state schools. LSU, they have a couple of really young, stars at the defensive back position that I feel like, are, may end up pushing him to staying in state a little bit. But I do think, probably for the last, I would say 6 months, it certainly has felt like an in-state decision for him, and I do see him staying in state when he makes that decision on October the 25th.
Yeah, so Jackie White says, he wants to know about the momentum, and you kind of just answered that right there. Like you feel like Alabama's picking up a lot of momentum with him.
Yeah, I think so. And I think hey, Jackie, thank you so much for the tip. It means a lot. Really appreciate that. And, happy to answer your question about Kool-Aid. But I do think, the last couple months, Coach Saban, Coach Scott, cornerbacks coach, have really done a great job of really pushing hard for Kool-Aid and making sure that he's a part of this recruiting class. He's been a very important piece of Alabama's class, in terms of getting him in this class for a long time. And I definitely think the momentum shifted in Auburn's favor for the last few months, but it seems to be turning back into Alabama's favor. And I think Alabama's got a great chance to land his commitment here in a couple weeks.
Here's one right here talking about all the fun stuff that Alabama has going on, and with recruiting. There's only 5 spots left, though, right?
Well, I think there's probably less than that. Alabama currently has 21 commitments. You can say 22 if you want to include Caden Clark, tight end from last year's class, but he actually gray shirted, so he's going to be a part of this year's recruiting class. So Alabama technically has 22 commitments in this class. I think they're certainly going to get to 25. I think the biggest question, will they get to 26? I don't see them getting to 27. I think that's just going to be too much. It's going to be kind of over the limit for Alabama. Maybe they get to 26, but as of right now, I certainly think they're going to get to 25. They're going to sign at least 3, maybe 4 more guys. And this is where it gets really interesting because there's so many players who are still out there. But so you have to kind of prioritize it. Who's it going to be? You really have to get at least 1 more defensive back, possibly 2. If they can get Kool-Aid and Terrion Arnold from Tallahassee, those are the 2 guys that they, have heavily recruited for a long time. That I feel like, if both of those guys want to commit, they're gonna take both of those guys. I definitely think they're going to try to take at least 1 more defensive lineman. There's some top defensive ends out there: Shamar Turner, JT Tuamola, Tumise Adelie. Those are certainly some guys that I think Alabama has a shot with. If you can get one of those guys, that's going to be a perfect scenario for Alabama. Then you gotta have to look at Xavier Sori, the linebacker out of IMG Academy, Brian Thomas, the wide receiver out of Louisiana. Those are some of the top names that are still out there that Alabama still is probably in the top 2 for it. At this point in their recruitment. I don't know what Alabama is going to do if both of those guys want to jump on board because they have been priority targets for a long time, but the numbers are extremely tight right now. So Alabama's going to really have to try to figure out what they're going to be able to do in terms of fitting those guys in this class.
Well, you figure they'll figure that out. Nick Saban's always good at that. Frank wants to know who's an uncommitted must get this cycle if there is one. Would you say that's Kool-Aid or is it someone else?
Well, I certainly think it's a defensive back. They do have 3 defensive backs committed right now. 4 if you include Kane Williams. I think Kane Williams can play defensive back or linebacker. He's 6'2", 210, 215 pounds right now, so could easily grow into a linebacker at the next level. So we'll kind of wait and see what happens there. But I certainly think that Alabama's got a great chance, to land at least 1 more defensive back in this class with Terrion Arnold, Kool-Aid, certainly right at the top of the list. But if they can get both of those guys, they're going to be very excited. I still think getting 1 more defensive end is a very important and critical position of need as well in this class.
How things looking for Shamar Turner? That's what Metcalf wants to know.
Yeah, with Shamar Turner, things are a little quiet. I mean, he has the top 5 with Alabama, Texas, Texas A&M, LSU, and Georgia. Now, he hasn't visited Georgia or LSU at this point, so many people would say if he goes out of state, it's going to be Alabama. But many people are now starting to think it's going to be an in-state recruiting battle. And we've been talking about Shamar Turner for a very long time. He visited Alabama for Junior Day. There was a lot of buzz, kind of, I would say in July, August, that he was going to end up at Alabama, that they were in the driver's seat for him. I still think Alabama has a great chance with him. But, in terms of, not being able to visit schools, and being a Texas kid, being a top priority for Texas and Texas A&M, it seems more like an in-state recruiting battle at this time. But Texas, had just came off a big loss. Texas A&M just came off a big loss. We're going to continue to watch to kind of see how their season goes, and it could really affect his recruitment down the road. But he's not going to make a decision anytime soon, and that's probably the biggest thing for Alabama. Will he hold off until potentially signing day to make a commitment or a All-American game, and what's going to be the outcome of Texas and Texas A&M season?
Here's another super chat. It's from Hunter. He's wanting to know if the kids can do virtual visits and FaceTime with any coaches. And I guess that's a good question because you said that they've really shut down a lot of the visiting right now.
Yeah, Hunter, thank you very much for the tip there. Really appreciate that. And happy to answer your question. In terms of virtual visits, FaceTime, that's been going on, really since the early spring and continues to happen, just about every single day. So there's no slowing down in that regard. In terms of who's going to be the next player to commit, I have to think it's going to be Kool-Aid. That's kind of the way I'm leaning right now. Marius Mims, he'll be announcing a decision on October the 14th. I do think it's going to come down between Georgia and Tennessee. I know people talk about Alabama, and he grew up an Alabama fan, but I think the lack of trips to Tuscaloosa since junior day, really kind of, affects his decision, because he's visited Georgia, has visited Tennessee multiple times over the course of the last couple months. Returning to Athens this weekend. I think there was a report out there that he was potentially coming to Tuscaloosa this weekend for a visit, but that's not happening. He's going over to Athens, going to be in Athens from Friday until Sunday, and then he's making that decision next week. So I just don't see him announcing a commitment to Alabama after going to Georgia this weekend and watching the two teams that I feel like are the top two for his in his recruitment. Another player who's going to be announcing a decision next week that we've talked about on this show several times is Christian Zachary. He's also not an in-state kid. He's a kid from the state of Georgia, from Carrollton, Georgia, and Alabama likes this kid a lot, but I think with Alabama's numbers right now, makes things extremely difficult in terms of taking another defensive end, outside linebacker type. He's more so of a jack linebacker. He's about 6'3", 250 pounds right now, but outstanding football player. I think if Alabama had a little bit more room, he would certainly be in this class. And they, you never know, they still may take him, but he's announcing on October the 15th, and I think that's going to be probably a little bit too soon for Alabama to make a decision on whether or not he can be a part of this class. But we're going to continue to watch him, see what happens. But those are two guys that Alabama's recruited for a while that I think is going to end up elsewhere. But then Kool-Aid is going to be announcing that decision on October the 25th, and I think that Alabama, as of right now, I'm leaning that direction with Kool-Aid to Alabama.
Let me remind everybody that all tips, a.k.a. Super Chats, they go to our man here, Andrew Bone, tonight. Hit the $ next to the comment button. Also, let me remind you of this, and I mean this. If you want to become a member of Bama Insider, it's really easy, and it is one of the best things that you can do as an Alabama fan. All you got to do is hit the join button at the bottom of the video, and you don't have to wait until Tuesday to get Bones Nuggets. He's got a lot of them, and recruiting's heating up. Alabama's kind of slimming down the available spots. So I got the #1 recruiting class. You're going to want to know fast, and Bama Insider is your place for that. So go to BamaInsider.com and take advantage also, if you're not a member now, of our free 30-day trial. Promo code is Roll Tide. All right, Bone, you talked about Georgia and this battle that Alabama has going with Georgia. What about Dallas Turner? There's been some, some speculation that he might be maybe jumping off Alabama and decommitting and going to Georgia. Any truth to that?
Dallas Turner, when he announced his decision to Alabama, back in the summer, it was really kind of a top three: Alabama, Georgia, Florida. And I would say probably in May and maybe a little bit earlier in the spring, a lot of people were predicting him to Georgia. Everybody kind of thought that was the direction he was going. He had visited Alabama and Georgia both for junior day, and a lot of people thought he was going to end up in Athens. Well, he ends up committing to Alabama, which surprised a lot of people, I think, especially in Georgia. So Georgia, I don't think, has really slowed down their pursuit of him, and I think that's probably what has a lot of people, maybe more so on message boards right now than anything else, talking about the potential of a flip. But from talking to Dallas's father here recently, I just don't see him flipping. I think he's very solid with his commitment. He's, they seem very happy with Alabama. So, it's something that we're going to continue to watch, continue to monitor just in case. But, just from talking to the Turner family, seems like they're very locked in with Alabama, very excited about the future. And, may also, from what we're hearing, planning on returning to Tuscaloosa next weekend for the game against Georgia.
Brady's got a question. He says, is there anybody you think that might flip from Alabama? We just talked about Dallas. I mean, is there any other players that you think might flip between now and signing day?
Well, like I said, I do think Dallas, even though Georgia, other schools are continuing to push for him, continuing to want him in their class, I do think he ends up sticking. Probably the one guy I'm continuing to watch just because he doesn't talk much and hasn't really shed much light is Kadarius Callaway. Alabama was able to flip Kadarius Callaway from Mississippi State earlier this summer. And I think that Mississippi State continues to push hard for him. They want him to stay in state. They, consider him a top priority. But Alabama loves this kid. They really want him as a part of this class as well, and they're fighting hard to keep him on board. As of right now, I still think he ends up sticking on board. And I just don't see anybody really flipping from Alabama's class. We saw a couple early flips from Alabama. We saw Drake May flipping from Alabama to North Carolina, the 4-star quarterback. We saw Latrell McCutcheon, who committed to Alabama last summer, the Rivals 100 defensive back. He basically just reopened his recruitment, but everybody kind of saw him committing to Oklahoma, which he eventually did. So, those were really the two guys, and I just see the rest of this class as very solid commitments to Alabama at this time.
How about Tumise Adela? Did I say that right?
Well, you never know. Yeah,
I think it's close, right?
Tumise Adelier, from
Adelier, okay.
That's how I'm saying it, at least. The 5-star defensive end from Texas had actually transferred to IMG Academy back in the spring, but once COVID kind of hit, ended up leaving IMG Academy and now doing some online classes and back in Texas, but has not made a decision just yet. He decommitted from Ohio State this summer, and looks like he's going to end up in the SEC. Alabama, Florida, Texas A&M. In my opinion, those are the top 3 schools for him, and really, all 3, very close, in terms of just being neck and neck for his signature. He does have a former teammate and close friend, Jalen Milroe, who's the leader of Alabama's recruiting class right now, the 4-star quarterback from Texas, who's pretty much recruiting him just about every single day. And Tumise was favoring Alabama heavily last summer. I think that helps Alabama's chances with him, but he's a little unpredictable. So we'll see what happens, but I do think Alabama has a great chance to land him. He says he's going to wait until signing day to announce, but it's very possible that he announces sometime before then.
Bone Jackie has a very interesting question. What's your favorite flavor of Kool-Aid? He likes black cherry. I'm like an orange Kool-Aid guy.
Yeah, I've had Kool-Aid and probably, I guess, 30
We grew
years.
up on that stuff. Yeah.
but yeah, I mean,
McKinstry. Come on, man.
Fruit punch from what I remember when I was 5 years old, but I don't think I've had it since then. But yeah, I'll just say fruit punch. That seems like a safe bet.
Hey, you better put a lot of sugar in there. I think it comes with the sugar in it now, but when we were kids, we dumped that stuff in there. Mm-hmm. All right, look, more questions about Kool-Aid, Alabama's number 1 prospect player. Would he be able to play football and basketball at the upper level? And you've seen this with a lot of Tennessee recruits right now, where they're able to play basketball and football. Is that something that you could do at Alabama?
Well, I think it's going to be tough. I know he wants to do it, and he's going to try to do it, and the opportunity is going to be there for him to do it. But Alabama is a premier college football program, and their seasons typically last a little bit longer than some other schools, and usually goes into January. And, you really don't want to get behind, when other guys are on campus, training just for football. And, I think it's going to be tough, but I think he's at least going to try to give it a go, see what happens, and go from there. But I do think it's going to be extremely difficult. And that's, that's almost no matter where he goes, out of the schools in his top 3.
Yeah, Julius Peppers was excellent at it at North Carolina, but different type of football program. Where was the other? Yeah, here it is right here. Jay Hines wants to know about the latest on some running backs.
Yeah, those are guys that just aren't going to end up in Alabama's recruiting class. I know L.J. Johnson put out a top 4. There's a lot of talk that he's going to end up at Texas, maybe Texas A&M. Kamar Wheaton, still feel very strongly that he's going to end up at Oklahoma. We'll have to just kind of wait and see. But in terms of either one of those guys ending up in Alabama's class, it's just not going to happen. I don't see Alabama signing a running back this year. They signed 3 running backs last year. I think they're very pleased with the guys that they signed, based on some early returns and based on how those guys are performing. You may not see them on the field right now, but in terms of the coaches seeing them in practice, they see them every single day. They know what they're capable of doing. I think they're really happy. And like we've been talking about, the numbers are extremely tight right now. 3-4 more guys, at the absolute max. So, taking a prospect at a position that you really don't need somebody at, it's going to be extremely difficult. Now, if Kamar Wheaton called him up and said, "Hey, I want to commit," it's going to be hard for Alabama to say, "Sorry, we don't have room for you." But I just don't see Alabama, signing a running back in this class at this time.
Guys, please post your recruiting questions in the comment box, and we'll get to them as we post through the show. And let me remind you, too, that all tips, a.k.a. Super Chats, go to Mr. Andrew Bone tonight. So hit the $sign next to the comment button. We'll get to those first, obviously. You can also become a member of Bama Insider by hitting the join button at the top of this video, and you don't have to wait until Tuesday to get Bones Nuggets. Also, go to BamaInsider.com and take advantage of our free 30-day trial. Promo code is simply Roll Tide. Bone, when you look at where Alabama is right now, only 5 slots left, depending on everyone signing. Is it tough for them to have to wait for these guys to commit to be able to make their next move? Because I've got the feeling that some of these guys are going to wait around until the last minute to pick a school.
Well, yeah, I definitely think it makes it tough because you're trying to fill in, these last few spots, and you're trying to, you got to prioritize. I'm getting tongue twisted over here. Prioritize these guys, and you got to make sure that you're targeting the right players. You got to make sure that you're filling your needs, but at the same time, you're in dog fights with schools like Ohio State, Georgia, Auburn, LSU for these top remaining targets. You just don't know which way it's going to go. You don't know if you need to press for this guy over that guy. So it makes it extremely difficult, especially with a lot of these players planning on waiting until signing day. I mean, you think about some of these top remaining targets for Alabama. The good thing is, DeQuincy McKinstry is going to be announcing his decision this month.
Right.
Amarius Mims going to be announcing his decision this month. Then you kind of have your defensive end targets. All those guys are still kind of waiting until signing day. You're really hoping to maybe get at least one of those players. Terrion Arnold, a big time defensive back target for Alabama. Looks like he's going to wait until signing day. Xavier Sori plans on waiting until signing day. So it makes things a little bit more, difficult, a little trickier for Alabama. But, they know who their top remaining targets are, and they're going, full throttle on all those guys until they announce their decisions.
Guys, I'm Mick Gillespie. I'm in for Kyle Henderson tonight. He'll be back next week. He is on assignment as we talk to Andrew Bone and get you caught up on recruiting. Bone, any of these recruits for Alabama do anything special on the high school football field lately that we should know about?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, now that we're back in football season and a lot of these guys didn't get seen during, I was really excited about prior to COVID, I was really excited about seeing, just so many different players, throughout, the spring and summer, because you get a chance to really see them compete, really at the highest level. Because, on Friday, it's great to go out to high school games on Friday nights or Thursday nights or Saturdays and see different players. But, these spring camps and summer camps, you get a chance to see, a guy maybe, that's going to Alabama go up against a guy that's going to Georgia or maybe going up, against a guy that's going to LSU and really see them compete and work against each other. So that's usually a lot of fun. We didn't get a chance to see that this year. So now we got the season, kind of going for most of these high schools throughout the country. We're starting to see a lot of, really special performances. Deontay Lawson out of Mobile Christian having, an unbelievable year. I think, the guys at IMG Academy, Ja'Cory Brooks and J.C. Latham, really kind of solidifying themselves as 5-star prospects. I think they've had a tremendous season so far and really kind of, showing how good they really are. And, Tommy Brockermeyer and James Brockermeyer, the Brockermeyer twins, the Bash brothers, coming back onto the field a couple of weeks ago. It's really good to see those guys out there. And Tommy had a great game, missed his entire junior season after having shoulder surgery. So it was great to see him back on the field. I know his team was a little disappointed because they, I think one of their assistant coaches was tested positive for COVID, so they ended up canceling a couple games. So I know they were disappointed in that, but it's good to see some of these guys back on the field and back healthy again.
He's Andrew Bone. He's the best in the business when it comes to recruiting, and we're talking Alabama recruiting right here on BamaInsider.com and the YouTube channel. Hey, guys, hit the like button if you enjoy listening to Andrew Bone tell you about recruiting. We, obviously are pretty excited about this number 1 recruiting class, and, Alabama, obviously, and Nick Saban hoping that they can continue to hold on to this recruiting class and be number 1 when it's all said and done, Bone.
Yeah, it's a great accomplishment to be number one right now, but you want to be number one on signing day. And if you're a top 3 recruiting class, top 5 recruiting class on signing day, you got to be happy because once you sign that class, it's all about development. You got to get these guys on campus. You got to develop them. You got to make sure that they don't walk into Tuscaloosa, with I'm a 5-star in their head. They got to earn their spot just like all these other guys because there's so much talent on this on this Alabama team, and they sign top 3, top 5 recruiting classes every single year. So there's just so much talent there. You got to really compete with those guys. And, I know Nick Saban has to de-recruit some of them once they get on campus because a lot of them want to start. They've been the big man on campus in high school, junior high school, and they were treated as as royalty during their recruitment. So once they get to Tuscaloosa or wherever they may end up signing, they're not the big man on campus anymore. There's other guys who've been fighting hard for their spot, and they don't want to let it up. It's somebody else's time to shine. So, I think with this number 1 recruiting class right now, it's a great class. I mean, offensive and defensive side of the ball, they've met some key needs so far, especially, offensive line, wide receiver, linebacker. They've done extremely well so far, but you got to really close strong. There's some key guys who remain out there. Even though there's only 3 or 4 spots remaining in this class, you got to make sure you're getting your top priority targets, to fill those needs. And I think if they do, they're going to finish with the number 1 recruiting class. And Ohio State, they're certainly not finished at all. They have the number 2 class in the country, and they're probably going to get another 5-star, maybe even 2 5-stars. So what's Alabama going to be able to do to combat that and finish as the top recruiting class in the country? I think if they can get Kool-Aid, if they can get a 5-star defensive end in terms of Shamar Turner, Tamisi Adelia, JT Tuamola, it could really solidify themselves as the top recruiting class in the country yet again.
Yeah, no doubt about it. When you have the top recruiting class, a lot of times that translates into a national championship. Cam wants to know about receivers besides Brian Thomas.
Yeah, well, Alabama's receiver class is outstanding. They have 3 great wide receivers: Ajay Hall, Ja'Cory Brooks, Christian Leary. If they can get Brian Thomas, I mean, it's certainly going to be the best wide receiver class in the country. There's still a few other guys that are out there that they're looking at, that they're talking with. Destin Hill, who's also out of Louisiana. I know Alabama still loves Xavier Worthy out of California, who's committed to Michigan. But I really do think that Brian Thomas is probably the only wide receiver as of right now that really has a chance to be in Alabama's class. Now, if they end up not getting Brian Thomas, I can see them only signing the 3 receivers that they currently have committed.
No doubt about it. Well, Bone, let's talk about your book, man. I mean, you're a big-time celebrity now because I saw you on Feinbaum last week on Thursday, and this whole book's about recruiting and some of the great stories that led to, really like just a roll call of awesome Alabama players that ended up in Tuscaloosa, and a lot of them won championships.
Yeah, no doubt. When I took on this project about a year ago, really wasn't sure, how to even do it. I've never written a book before, so really wasn't sure the direction. I was able to, speak with some authors and kind of get, their take. Read some books and kind of, got a feel of how I wanted to do it, and got a feel of how they did it. And I was very fortunate to speak to 18 former Alabama greats, from the Bear Bryant years all the way through the Nick Saban years, about their journey, their recruitment, and not only talking to the players, but talking to people that were a big part of their lives then, whether it was parents, high school coaches, mentors, coaches from the various universities who recruited them. I didn't just speak with the guys who recruited them to Alabama. I spoke to assistant coaches or head coaches from different schools that getting their perspective as to why they felt like they missed out on that prospect during his high school years. So it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was a true honor for me to speak to guys like Leroy Jordan and Johnny Musso and Cornelius Bennett and David Palmer and Bobby Humphrey and Marty Lyon. I mean, there was just so many big names that have played at the University of Alabama that I was very fortunate, to speak with. And, John Hanna and Dwight Stevenson, 2 NFL Hall of Famers. So, I mean, that was just amazing to speak to those guys. And, then, leading up to, Brody Croyle and D'Amico Ryans and Antonio Langham and Jay Barker and, Chris Samuels, and then into the Nick Saban years with Trent Richardson and TJ Yeldon and Barrett Jones and Rashaan Evans and Tua. I mean, it's just a lot. It was a lot of fun to write. It was a lot of fun to visit with those guys and speak to them and speak to their families and everybody that was really involved in their recruitment. And talking to Mark Richt, former Georgia and Miami head coach, about his recruitment of Brody Croyle. A lot of people thought that Brody was going to go to Florida State, and Mark Richt was the offensive coordinator at Florida State at the time. So speaking to him, getting his perspective about sitting in the house with Brody and his family and kind of what all went down in that regard. And, just speaking to, guys like Jim Fuller, who was the assistant coach at Alabama, who recruited Cornelius Bennett and Bobby Humphrey, and kind of getting his perspective on things. So it's a lot of stories like that. And each story, each chapter is an individual story. So you can kind of jump around. You don't necessarily have to read, chapter 1 through 18 all in order. You could jump from chapter 1 to chapter 18, but it was a lot of fun to write, and I appreciate Jay Barker for writing the foreword for me and his very nice comments throughout the book. So I think a lot of people will really enjoy the read, not just Alabama fans. I think football fans in general, because it really sheds a good light on even programs that recruited against Alabama, because a lot of these players who got recruited by Auburn or LSU or Georgia, they had a lot of great comments about these other schools that recruited them, and they have relationships with these coaches to this day.
Hey guys, please post your recruiting questions in the comment box, and we'll get to them as we push through the show. I want to remind you that all tips, aka super chats, they go right to Mr. Andrew Bone tonight. Hit the $ next to the comment button. You can also become a member of Bama Insider by hitting the join button at the bottom of the video, right here at the bottom of this video. And you don't have to wait until Tuesday to get Bones Nuggets. You'll be one of the first to know. And also go to BamaInsider.com and take advantage of our 30-day trial. Promo code is Roll Tide. We've talked a lot about Kool-Aid McKinstry, of course, known as Kool-Aid. He's announcing on October 25th, he's the number one player in the state of Alabama. If he goes to Alabama, you're talking about 4 spots available in this recruiting class right now. Besides Alabama, who are some of the other teams? You mentioned Ohio State. I know Georgia, that are kind of you want to keep an eye on as far as the chance to be the number one recruiting class.
Well, I think you always have to watch Ohio State. Currently sitting with the number 2 class, and pretty early on in the recruiting season, a lot of people just had kind of written everybody else in the country off, and everybody was just saying, "Oh, it's Ohio State," and then everybody else. Well, then Alabama started getting their top commitments on board, and Alabama moved ahead of the Buckeyes. But I still think Ohio State has a great chance to potentially finish with the top class in the country. There's 2 5-stars who Ohio State, many people feel like is in the driver's seat for it. Mike Ibuka, the number 1 receiver in the country out of Washington, also JT Tuamula. That's going to be kind of I think, that could really weigh things in terms of Alabama or Ohio State, because he has Alabama and Ohio State, in my opinion, the top 2 schools for him at this moment. It's, one of the best defensive prospects in the country, also out of the state of Washington. So it's something to really keep an eye on. Florida, currently having a great recruiting class this year, and they're still really involved in some of Alabama's top targets. Temesi Adelier, Xavier Story, Terrion Arnold, all those guys are strongly considering, Florida in addition to Alabama. Georgia, I think Georgia's got a chance to, really close strong. LSU has a chance to really close strong. LSU, many people believe, the number 1 player in the country, Corey Foreman out of California, leaning towards the Tigers, along with the number 1 defensive tackle in the country, Mason Smith. If LSU is able to get both those guys on board, they could really make a move into that top 5. So it's going to be very interesting to kind of see how it all plays out over the upcoming months.
Wow, that's it's going to be interesting. Has life in recruiting changed since the way that they have the deadlines with the early signing period changed? I mean, I remember it was always like February something, we would have the signing day, And it seemed like that first year Alabama didn't get out of the blocks like we're used to, and all of a sudden now it just feels like this is Nick Saban Alabama recruiting at its finest.
Yeah, I think with the early, early signing period, I think, we're starting to see, recruits get, recruited early on.
Mm-hmm.
You see more recruits that are starting to get recruited very early, sophomores, juniors. So a lot of them, they're ready to make that decision because they've been recruited for so long. They've taken so many visits. This is going to be an interesting year this year, because of COVID. Without a lot of kids being able to take visits, take officials. As of right now, the recruiting dead period has been extended to January the 1st. So are more recruits going to still sign in December, or are they going to wait and potentially take all their official visits in January? I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen. I do think we're probably still going to see the majority of guys who are committed sign in December, but I think the majority of these top uncommitted prospects who continue to say they're going to wait, a lot of these guys are waiting until at least January, maybe even February to decide, because they weren't able to take these visits during the spring and during the summer and into the fall.
Sean just dropped you $20. Not too bad right there.
My
Thanks,
man.
Sean.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Alabama off to a great start this season, 2-0.
Yeah, 2-0. It sucks for Alabama not being able to get recruits, into the games. We did, on the sidelines every single game day. You see just a plethora of recruits just lined up and down the sidelines, especially for the big games. You would have seen just so many different stars, down on the field during the Texas A&M game this past weekend, and completely empty. There are some recruits who've said, they're still going to try to get to Tuscaloosa this season. Alabama commitment Ian Jackson, linebacker commitment from Prattville High School, actually visited Tuscaloosa last weekend with his family. So he was one of the few that has seen Alabama in person this year. So we'll see if some others are able to, get to some games this season. Probably going to be more of the commitments. Maybe some prospects are going to make it. Guys like Terrion Arnold, Xavier and Sorey, two of Alabama's top remaining targets, are at least trying to get up to the Alabama-Georgia game next weekend. We'll see if that ends up happening. But yeah, it makes things a little bit more difficult because a lot of these kids aren't able to see these game day atmospheres, and I think that's a big part of of recruiting. But obviously things are different this year, and it's not just Alabama who's not able to get kids on campus; it's everybody. So everybody's kind of in the same boat this season.
Alabama started off recruiting slow, and they just caught fire. Why is that? What happened to get things turned around in such a major way?
Well, I think a lot of Alabama's top targets who made decisions during the summer, I think a lot of them were really kind of just waiting to see, what was going to happen in terms of, would they be able to visit college campuses during the summer? I think a lot of them were leaning towards Alabama, but, there was a lot of different schools that, are continuing to, we're continuing to recruit them and hoping to get those guys on campus during the summer. Well, when the NCAA continued to extend the dead period and push it back, I think that, that caused a lot of guys to just say, hey, I know where I want to go. I'll go ahead and make a decision. Now, if I'm able to take some visits later on, I'll still do it, but ready to go ahead and decide. And, I think Alabama was, they were pretty eager to get some commitments on board because, we saw that there was, I think it was pretty much I think it was April or maybe it was early May. Alabama only had 3 commitments on board. Everybody's talking about all these other programs throughout the country that had, 17, 18, 20 commitments. Everybody's wondering, does Nick Saban still have it anymore?
Yeah.
And I kept telling everybody, just be patient. The most of Alabama's targets were still out there. They were uncommitted. Even though a lot of other schools continue to get commitments, most of those guys weren't even Alabama targets. So, we kept just telling people, be patient. It's going to happen. It's going to be fine. And then, May, June, July, it was just bam, 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 bam. They started getting a lot of great commitments and pulled a few surprises as well along the way. I mean, J.C. Latham, one of the best offensive linemen in the country, committed to Alabama. And a lot of people thought he was going to Ohio State. Dallas Turner, a lot of people thought he was going to Georgia. Christian Leary, a lot of people thought he was going to Oklahoma or Florida. Then Alabama flipped some guys, Jalen Milroe, Devontae Smith, Kadarius Callaway. So it was a great summer for Alabama in terms of just reeling in big commitment after big commitment, and they were on fire. And yes, things have slowed down tremendously, but they're going to pick back up. Alabama still has, like I said, about 3 or 4 spots remaining in this class. They could get a big one here this month in Kool-Aid McKinstry, as he announces that decision on October the 25th. But the majority of its remaining targets, it looks like they're going to wait until closer to signing day to make a decision.
Yep, Johnny, hoping that Alabama gets Mims. You got to have spots, though, too, and I guess a lot of that just kind of comes down to how the deck unfolds between now and National Signing Day. All right, Bone, look, you're on every Tuesday night, and that means that next Tuesday's going to be another opportunity for you to get on here and update everybody on what's going on. Is there anything to keep an eye on between now and then?
Not a lot. I think, obviously October the 14th, October the 15th next week, a lot of people are going to be watching, Marius Mims' decision. They're going to be watching Christian Zachary's decision. But as of right now, I just don't see Alabama getting either one of those guys. I think Mims, like I said before, I think he ends up going to Tennessee or Georgia. Christian Zachary, not really sure what's going to happen with him. I would not be surprised if he potentially pushes things back, just because I just don't know if Alabama is going to have a spot for him next week. I know they like him a lot. He's been pretty high on their recruiting board, but the numbers are just so tight right now that they may try to entice him to wait a little bit longer until they can kind of figure out what they're going to be able to do with him. So we'll see what happens, but those are the 2 guys who are going to be announcing within the next week, and that's pretty much it in terms of what may be going on in the recruiting landscape of things. Of course, for the last few months, we've been talking about Kool-Aid McKinstry and how he's an Auburn lean, and forget about him. He's not joining Alabama's class. And then, of course, over the last couple of days, we've really been hearing a lot of positive things in Alabama's favor. And he announced his decision date yesterday of October the 25th. So you never know what may happen within the next week. There's anything could happen. Terrion Arnold just tweeted today. One of Alabama's top remaining defensive back targets, that he's going to be putting out his top 5 here pretty soon. So that's something that we're going to be watching closely. Also going to be watching to see if who may potentially come up to Tuscaloosa next weekend for the Alabama-Georgia game. Even though recruits are not able to be on on the field, and maybe they're going to be able to get a ticket to the game. I know that's going to be a tough ticket to get, but I think if we see some top targets at least make it to campus, kind of see the game day atmosphere, I know it's going to be a little bit different than a typical weekend in Tuscaloosa, but yeah, I mean, if those guys are able to come up to Alabama, at least kind of experience that whole environment, it puts Alabama in a good place with a couple of those guys.
Let me remind you guys that you can become a member of Bama Insider by hitting the join button. That's at the bottom of this video, and you don't have to wait until Tuesday to hear from Mr. Andrew Bone and get his recruiting nuggets. Also, go to BamaInsider.com. Advantage our free 30-day trial. The promo code is easy. It's simple. You know it. It's Roll Tide. All right, Bone. I've had fun, man. I can't believe that this show's pretty much over. I mean, we've gone through everything, and now we have to cut you loose for the Cayman Islands.
Well, Virgin Islands, but
Virgin Islands.
Yeah. I'm
St. Thomas. You going to St. Thomas?
Flying into St. Thomas.
Oh man, I've been there with Alabama basketball. It's one of the best places I've ever been. Man.
Yeah, I'll take a ferry over to St. John, so I'm gonna be in St. John from Wednesday to Monday. So I'll be sure to post some pictures on Twitter and on the Bama Insider message board. So I'm sure everybody's going to hate me for the next 5 days, but I'm looking forward. It's my wife's also a little mad at me for going because it's a little bit of a guy's trip. So
not taking the wife with you, huh?
No, she had a girls' trip to Europe last summer, and it was almost a last minute trip to the Virgin Islands, but she's happy I'm able to go because it's been a bit busy year for us, and this is it's gonna be fun.
Are you still considered a newlywed?
Man,
yeah.
You're in that now, so but we've I don't know. Feels like we've been together for 20 years.
Yeah, right. Well, look, have a great time in the Virgin Islands. Next week, Kyle Henderson will be back, and you and Kyle will talk same time, same channel. And we appreciate all you guys for watching. And so for Andrew Bone and Kyle Henderson, I'm Mick Gillespie. Guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to BamaInsider.com. Alabama plays Ole Miss on Saturday. We'll have the Bama Insider Tailgate Show Friday night, 6 to 8. You can watch it right here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Man, have a great trip. Thanks for watching, guys. That does it for us. Roll Tide. And Gary, throw this out there to you.
Oh, wow.
That's going to help you out on your trip right there. Gary, thanks.
Much, Gary. Thank you so much. Thanks to everybody for the
it's a round of drinks from Gary.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have a couple of painkillers down there. So thank you very much.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll do it again next week. See you.